Hi, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of Advocacy, Passion, and Beyond Voices from the SI Leader Lab, a podcast brought to you by Feminism in India in collaboration with the Swedish Institute. I'm your host, Japleen Pasricha, and today we are talking about how to counter gender based disinformation and why it's important for democracy. And with me, I have two guests. So, first, let me introduce Noura Aljizawi from Syria. She's a researcher at the Citizen Lab at Munk School of Global Affairs and Public Policy at the University of Toronto. Her research focuses on the intersection of information and communication technology, human rights, and global security. She studies digital translational repression, disinformation, and digital authoritarianism. Previously, she was an active member of the Syrian opposition and played a key role in Geneva peace talks 2014. She's also the co founder and the chairwoman of Start Point, an organization that works in Syria and focuses on supporting victims of torture and empowering women and youth to enhance democracy and civil rights. Noura is also an alumni of the Young Leaders Visitors Program offered by the Swedish Institute, as well as a participant of the Digital Advocacy Lab. Hi, Noura, and welcome. How are you feeling today?
Hi, thank you so much. I'm excited to start. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, Noura. We are also very excited to be here with you. And now I would like to introduce my second guest, Hira Amjad from Pakistan. Hira is the co founder and executive director of DASTAK Foundation and has been working to eradicate gender based violence and promote women's rights across Pakistan since 2014. She has worked on gender related subjects with the US Embassy and UNDP, and especially with survivors of violence during the COVID 19 lockdown. Hira was awarded the Human Rights Award by Geneva in 2021 for her work through initiatives such as Wasila and Tabir Network. She is also an alumni of the SI Leader Lab. Hi, Hira, how are you doing today?
Hi, thank you so much for having me here today. It's always great to talk about the work that we are doing here in Pakistan on GBV prevention. So, thank you for having me.
Thanks, Hira. And Noura, I would like to begin with you. Given that your work is based in research, I would like to understand what would you say are the biggest patterns in gender-based disinformation.
Yeah, in summary, it's absolutely an attack on democracy. It's digitalized, like in somehow everything is going on. All kind of gender-based violence that take place against women offline in real life. You can find them on digitalized on the social media platforms. Unfortunately, we can't separate what's going on, like online gender-based violence, from the offline gender-based violence. And in both, whether online or offline, the lives, the civic rights of the lives of women are under attack. But moreover, if we want to talk about the impact of these attacks or this kind of gender-based violence online, we can talk about, or what now it's becoming more, the terminology is being used, the gender disinformation. It's not random act. You can absolutely find the inauthentic coordinated behavior. You can find absolutely, if you want to dig more about the social networks that's running these kind of disinformation campaigns, targeting women who are activists, human rights defenders, feminists, politicians, peacemakers, journalists. You can absolutely find the roots of or the manipulated accounts of these campaigns, and all of these people are definitely connected to whether misogynist groups or authoritarian regimes or other militias, if we're going to talk about the conflict zones. But moreover, which is like something appear a lot in my research as I'm studying with my colleagues, the digital transnational repression, that even like when women are exiled from their country of origin and resettle in democracy, assuming that they have relatively degree of safety, they find themselves again under such attack, and their ability to practice their essential civic rights, freedom of expression, freedom of opinion, they will be undermined because the authoritarian regimes are taking the advantage of these digital tools and social media platforms and other kind of sophisticated digital technology surveillance to undermine the democracy and to discredit the exiled activists. So whether in the country of origin or beyond the borders of these country of origins, authoritarian regimes are still targeting the female activists, likewise the other dissidents. But in specific, when it comes to the to women, the attack, disinformation, and online campaigns would be like shaped in different or in very specific manners, and we can definitely talk about it more.
Thanks, Noura. And I completely agree with you. Online gender-based violence is an epidemic, and I feel that all stakeholders involved, be it states, be it social media platforms, be it civil society organizations, have to really take it seriously. And I would just like to give you an example from a news that is very relevant in my country today. There was a case of some men creating fake profiles of Muslim women in India and selling them online. And just today, we got to know that the court has granted all of them bail. Like this is a news coming in today. They were found guilty, and they have been granted bail by the court. And it's just so disappointing to see how little governments and other stakeholders think of women's lives, and especially women from marginalized groups. And speaking of this, Hira, I believe that India and Pakistan share a very similar culture and very similar issues when it comes to violence against women, and especially online violence against women. Since your organization works on gender-based violence, across Pakistan, I would like to know more about how you do that. Yeah, and if you could give me examples of advocacy campaigns where you have worked on, or where you have created safe spaces for survivors of violence.
Thank you. Thank you for this very important question. But first of all, I would definitely like to, take cue from what Noura said, that gender-based discrimination is targeted and systematic and planned. It's not random, and I have seen cases where women have been targeted with strategically designed campaigns from various platforms and profiles, and this makes the work that we are doing to create online spaces very difficult. The DASTAK Foundation is working on multiple fronts, but since today we are here to talk about gender disinformation, especially within online spaces, so I'm going to focus more on the online work or the digital advocacy vis-a-vis gender-based violence that we are doing here in Pakistan. So why did we start DASTAK in the first place? I think there is this, like, as I've already told you during our candid conversation as well, that there is a strong need to have safe spaces of expression where women feel comfortable to talk about their problems, to talk about their issues. We have conducted massive healing circles on sexual and reproductive health rights, SGBV prevention in different parts of the country, not just with women but also with men, because the SIRC strongly believes that countering gender-based violence cannot be done solely by working with women, but also creating male allies at community level. So when we are working within digital spaces and we face gender-based discrimination, gender-based disinformation and violence, it undermines the support and solidarity that takes us years and years to create and build. Because you see, safe networks in the form of Facebook groups, in the form of Instagram pages, in the form of chat sessions, or online sessions, they do not just happen overnight. It takes us months and years to build those conversations, to dig up subjects where we can encourage more and more survivors to feel comfortable, to feel related. Like, for example, we did this activism campaign last year when there was this case in Pakistan where a mother was raped on a motorway. Like, I think it was picked up by international media as well. And we saw like a massive influx of victim blaming across social media platforms, where instead of talking about the issue itself, I saw men, women alike talk about what was she doing there, why didn't she see that coming, what was she doing, why didn't she plan it all, etc., etc. So instead of talking about the crime or the perpetrator, the person who was responsible for it, we immediately resort to victim blaming. So these networks of support and solidarity that we, my organizations, other organizations like DASTAK, that they create in such times, they come really handy vis-a-vis resetting the narrative, vis-a-vis putting across the right information that victim blaming needs to stop. The blame needs to be put on the perpetrator rather than the survivor. So the DASTAK Foundation last year did this activism campaign with the hashtag I choose to stand with the survivor of violence. And it was picked up by national media, and it was able to break this narrative of disinformation around the subject of victim blaming in our country. We were able to create this change of constructive conversation, that why we need to support the survivors or stand in solidarity with them. Similarly, we have done other massive campaigns on 16 days of activism, International Women's Day, to bridge this information gap that exists between survivors and support avenues in the country. Because during the COVID pandemic, when we saw a massive increase in cases of domestic violence, massive complaints, we kept on receiving them through our social media platforms. So women in Pakistan particularly did not know how and where to seek help. And that's where these social support avenues or platforms such as the DASTAK Foundation can play a very integral role in connecting them with the right support avenues. So that's a little bit of the work that we are doing. But I would be happy to continue in the follow-up questions.
Thanks, Hira. Thanks so much. I completely understand where you're coming from. Safe online spaces are so important, and especially, in the new world, as everyone calls it, that we live in today, where it's a digital first world, and a lot of grassroots communities also had to come online. Schools had to come online. During the pandemic, online safe spaces just become so integral, and it's really daunting to know. And I have been myself, uh, a victim of online abuse, to the extent where I had to deactivate my Twitter profile for months, just because it was so aggravating on my mental health. And Noura, I believe you have also worked on this aspect of what disinformation and online abuse, how it impacts especially women and survivors of violence. And apart from the mental health aspect of it, I would like to know more from you. How does it actually put women at risk, both of physical safety as well as mental health issues? And what can we as allies, or as civil society organizations or stakeholders can do to counter this or to help those survivors?
Thanks so much for raising this issue. As you both mentioned, that in many contexts, the cybersphere is becoming in somehow alternative sphere where the marginalized communities and women, whether in their country of origin or beyond the borders, can express themselves, can participate in the public discourse about the the public issues of their communities and countries. However, talking about the impact of these disinformation campaigns or gender disinformation campaigns targeting women, along with other absolutely other digital targeting methods, they have severe impacts on women in specific. Starting like from the mental health, where it's going to be a lot of women, as you did, they would maybe deactivate their accounts just to stay disconnected from the hate speech and all of this kind of disinformation. Especially like if we want to talk about the nature, the language is being used in these disinformation against women are not something to create discussion or to raise questions or to disagree with the women's work and opinions. They are more smear campaigns. A lot of like fabricated photos and a lot of fake images of these women, and a lot of just everything has the roots of the topic of women's body and their sexual life and so on, which is something, unfortunately, it's still like a taboo in many communities. So women would not only, when they become victims of gender disinformation, they are not only targeted on in this cyberspace. Deactivating social media accounts in many cases will never be a solution or like the only one solution. Many women reported that besides the online attacks, they've been under disinformation campaigns. They've been targeted also in the real life. So their own physical safety and security was threatened. And absolutely it will impact them mentally, as also they reported in many interviews we conducted, like paranoia, anxiety, depression, and that also all of these impacts on their mental health will have other impacts on their physical health. Again, it's targeting the well-being of these active members of the community, and consequently, it will affect their ability to study, their ability to be productive, their ability to participate or to do their work properly, or their ability to take care of their families and loved ones. Many women also reported how they feel like in the real life, how they feel socially isolated, whether because the gender disinformation campaigns was based on misogyny and tried to play it was organized and based on the taboos in the communities. So again, as Hira mentioned, these women as victims will be blamed by the community. In many cases, I talk with myself, also I experienced some of these. I had my own share of these gender disinformation campaigns, likewise other Syrian women who dare to involve in politics or speak something about against the policies of the regime and authoritarianism, or against the crimes of Russia in our country against our people. So in many cases, we've been blamed. Okay, you have an opinion, don't post it. Okay, is that the solution? Absolutely not. And then day by day, women who involve in politics and public affairs, they will feel themselves like in the social life, in the real life, very much isolated. Some people who are not willing, as Hira mentioned also, to engage with these women online, they will start even like declining the engage with them in offline and real life. I don't want to dig more about the mentality of these people and what kind of motivation they have, but some of these people will feel like afraid of being targeted again just because they have any kind of association with this woman. But definitely some of them would be sadly consumers of these disinformation campaigns, and they will join the crowd of blaming the woman instead of showing solidarity and supporting them. So in summary, I feel like the severe impacts are not only on the online, on the decline of women, and when they started withdrawing from the online discussion about the what's going on in their country, but also everything will have impact on their lives, whether on their relationship with their families and partners and loved ones, whether in the impact on their ability to work, to study, to be productive members in their communities, and also their sense of personal safety and security. There's a lot of cases worldwide, and unfortunately, what's going on in India and Pakistan, it's still it's becoming global phenomenon in the light of that the painful fact about the lack of response from the social media companies, who are although they can and they realize such campaigns or such networks of trolls or inauthentic behaviors, but instead of evolving or doing something to respond to these networks, they just watch. For many reasons, many of them don't have humans to verify or to check the report. And also everything is becoming on the victims themselves. If you are under attack, you should report to the social media company. And if you are lucky to have a human to review your report and the content that's attacking your safety, attacking your well-being, it might take days, and the discourse will be like running all the time against you. And in many cases, as the painful experience of many women who reported such violent content, the response would be very much disappointing, that we don't think that this account is violating the rules of safety and security on our platforms. So the women, again, are being alone, fighting alone, and becoming more and more isolated in the digital space and also in the real life.
Noura, I don't know which point I should pick up, because you have made such great points and I was just nodding to everything that you were saying, because this is, as I said, it's a global epidemic. I don't think there is any women's rights activist in any, corner of the world who has not experienced online abuse and gender-based disinformation because she's putting her opinion online. And it's across cultures, regions, countries, it's everywhere. And I completely agree on the part that social media platforms do not do the required work that they are supposed to. They don't have enough people to review. Their priorities are not set on protecting survivors of abuse or ensuring that their platform is abuse free. I know that's a that's a very ideal situation, but speaking of safe spaces online, Hira, I would like to come back to you and ask you how does your organization, like, what are the strategies, or how do you ensure within your groups that your that the groups are safe, or that you create safety within the groups? And if you could give examples of any disinformation campaigns that you may have executed, or how you deal with disinformation in such groups.
Thank you so much for pointing that out. Okay, so the entirety of the work that the DASTAK Foundation is doing is based on countering misperception related to gender-based violence in Pakistan and South Asia as well, because we have a regional network which is called Tabir, as part of which we are advocating the use of digital media platforms to strengthen gender-based violence prevention in different countries. We all must have heard this statement that if it isn't physical, it isn't violence. If you don't see it, you do not believe it. And that is something that we really, really struggle with when we are doing community engagement workshops with students at universities, colleges, and school. Because you see, countering violence within digital spaces is directly connected to the work that we are doing at community level. So the work that we are doing online is directly connected with the work that we have to do at community level in order to raise awareness and counter disinformation regarding the extent of gender based violence that exists within our societies. Because you see, in Pakistan, and I'm sure this is a problem that we face either across the globe and particularly in South Asia, that there is this lack of acceptance that gender based violence is our problem. On our platform, whenever we post something related to the prevalence of gender based violence or gender based disinformation, we like 80, 70 to 80% of the comments actually talk about that this is not our problem, this is a propaganda. We are trying to we are trying to misguide the woman. And most of the time, the criticism also comes from the religious perspective or religious factions within our society as well. They use religion to counter the prevalence of gender based violence or the information that we are trying to disseminate. So first of all, what Dastak is trying to do is we are trying to educate youth within schools, universities, and colleges regarding ways and means to identify cybercrime, violence within digital spaces, and how to report that. And trust me, very recently, last month, I was doing this activity with around 50 students at one of the most prestigious universities. And we have produced a couple of short films on cyber harassment. So after the film, I asked all of the students, do you know how to report cyber harassment? And unanimously, all of them said, no, we don't know that. We don't know whom to reach out to. We don't know what are the support avenues. We don't know what is the name of the agency that is supposed to cater to the problems which are pertaining to cyber harassment within digital spaces. So one, what Dastak is trying to do is we are trying to bridge this information deficit. Secondly, we are trying to work with respective organizations to speed up the reporting process. As Noura also mentioned, that even if we report, we do not get the kind of support or the response that is needed. Dastak has also worked with Facebook during International Women's Day campaign to monitor, spam and hate comments that you would see on the profiles of women rights activists and feminist activists on social media platforms, particularly Facebook and Instagram. You see, I understand that the work that they're doing is not enough. But what we as civil society can do is support them in order to you see rectify the problem of trolls which are present online. And we ourselves have experienced this massively, especially during 16 days of activism, International Women's Day, menstrual hygiene campaigns. Whenever we do something like targeted programming to counter disinformation related to gender based violence, we have this flood of bot accounts that who would comment things like abusive language. Me and my team, we have also received death threats from men from different parts of the country as well. So you see, we are working at community level to counter the information deficit, and B, we are working with platforms such as Meta and FIA to come up with or strategize better ways on how to make online spaces safe for feminist activism, women human rights defenders, and people who are working on gender based violence prevention.
I think, again, I know I'm going to repeat myself by saying this is a global statistic because I've been saying that throughout the podcast. But we all know that domestic violence and gender-based violence increased during the pandemic, where women many times were living with their abusers and they had no other place to go. Where and especially in a country like India, where marital rape is not even recognized as a crime. There we don't have data of how many women living with the abusers, married women, faced this kind of sexual violence, and it's just really pathetic to know that we live in a society, in a situation where there is only little that the people who should be responsible for our safety, our security, have done very less. And Noura, my next question is for you. Knowing that you have worked substantially on countering disinformation, how do you think the pandemic has accelerated the sharing of unverified information, and do you think enough steps have been taken to counter it?
Oh, thanks so much for raising this point. Actually, everything happened during the pandemic related to the access to information. The rights of people to access to information is related to what was going on before the pandemic, but the pandemic accelerated and maybe exaggerated the impact and raised people awareness worldwide about the issues. First of all, when you talk about the pandemic, absolutely, it was reported worldwide. The disinformation campaigns against maybe about the coronavirus pandemic, and then about the vaccine, the credibility of the vaccine, and so on. But when we talk also about the impact on the targeted communities, specifically in countries where under authoritarianism, where citizens don't have access to independent or proper sources of information to understand or to take the valid information, it's a greater impact than other contexts when people can have a source of information they can trust and verify what they are reading on social media and on WhatsApp groups. But this is one of the problems. The other problem is the inequality in access to information and access to internet and devices in many countries worldwide. I'm talking about my experience working with the IDPs in Syria, and specifically in the northwest, where we conducted prior to the pandemic. The Start Point conducted a survey. It was like field survey, and about women accessibility to devices and internet. 90% of women who responded to our survey reported that whether they don't have independent devices to access to internet. Like about 50% of them, they share the devices with a male member in their household. Talking about a conflict zone and IDP camps, 90% or 92% of women, they said they don't have access to internet. So all of these issues together tell us something about how women would be like more severely impacted by the disinformation, because the disinformation about coronavirus pandemic and about the vaccine were not only taking place online, but the discussion was also taking place in the day-to-day life and in people's offline life and social life and so on. So this is a huge issue that maybe the world will learn the lesson about, to advocate and work more on the accessibility to devices and internet. Besides, absolutely the access, the right to access to independent information and to access to information. Because talking about Syria, it's a country under authoritarianism, and besides the different de facto authorities that ruling the country, but all of them, they practice the same methods of censorship and manipulation of the discourse online about the country. So again, this was the issue. Therefore, the team, when I've been talking with the volunteers in our team on the ground, they proposed that, okay, we have centers, we can take some measures to protect people, masks, sanitizers, and so on. And there's absolutely, in IDP camps, you can't impose lockdown. So people would have access to some kind of public spaces, whether outdoors gathering or access to start point centers. And then I started working along with my colleagues to send them valid information from trusted sources about the pandemic. We tried also to track the pattern of disinformation and misinformation around the pandemic. So we counter and somehow we did like some kind of fact check. You might hear online or offline about specific issue against or around the vaccine, but these are the facts about the vaccine XYZ, and we encourage a lot of people to commit to the at least some kind of the protection measures like masks, like sanitizer, and then the population in the IDP camps who showed up to the vaccination centers. They were like relatively great because of the work, and I believe that the work was the value of the work, that it was only one example. It was not only online work, but it was also offline. Online, we collaborated with other partners. We used to refer people who used to text us, reach out to us on our social media pages and accounts, that you can check the facts here. These are the facts. But what about the people, the most vulnerable ones, who are consuming the disinformation offline, or they don't have proper access, long-time access to the internet and devices to check the facts and make their own evaluation. So this is only one kind, but I also would like to connect this to how we can counter the gender disinformation. I believe, I'm not optimistic here because I can see that the fact check is an effective tool to counter the gender disinformation, unfortunately, because of many reasons, including that the vast majority of communities, they don't trust the credibility of women to take leadership roles in the public sphere. This is like a battle we've been involving in. We've been fighting on the ground to create spaces to women to take leadership roles in their communities and to play a crucial role in the politics and public affairs of their communities and countries. So this gender disinformation is just another front. Therefore, I don't believe that the fact-checking and similar methods we've been taken to respond to the disinformation during the pandemic would be effective tools and specific to counter the gender disinformation. Rather, it could be like maybe one aspect, but definitely I believe that the response would be absolutely broader and requires a lot of collaboration and solidarity from activists and feminists worldwide, along with other measures. We can talk about them later.
You know, Noura, I have a very similar story to tell you. So, even in India last year, when the vaccine was rolled out, there was a social media post that went viral that women shouldn't take the COVID-19 vaccine 5 days before their periods are about to start because it will lower their immunity or something like that. And you won't believe how many people actually believed it, how quickly the post went viral. But thankfully, a lot of doctors came forward to bust this myth. They came forward on social media, they talked to the press, news media covered it. But even then, we even though India doesn't have that huge a percentage of vaccine naysayers or people who would who would deny getting the vaccine, but it's like how WhatsApp forwards work. It's very difficult to reach them and to explain them and explain the logic behind it, because already in India menstruation is such a huge taboo topic, and coupled with the COVID-19 and the vaccine, it was just a huge mess at that time. And I think even the government came forward on Twitter to talk about that this is just a myth and this is not true. But just shows how like a simple post can do so much damage, that so many women did not want to take the vaccine because they believed in it, or as you also mentioned earlier, that many times women don't even have their own mobile phones or other devices like a laptop. And that's the same situation in India. A lot of women do not own mobile phones. So decisions like these are then also taken by the men in the house of if and when you can get the vaccine. And it's just so dangerous because the second wave of COVID in India was disastrous. It was very fatal, and just the amount of, we don't even know how many lives were lost because the government refuses to the government shows a data which somehow just doesn't reflect the ground reality. And Hira, I would like to know more, because you mentioned that your organization also worked during COVID on preventing gender-based violence. I would like to know more about it, as well as how do you think that the COVID-19 pandemic has once again raised the question of focusing on gender data and gender-specific recovery plans?
Okay, so you see, as Nora was talking, so I was just thinking that it is really important to ask ourselves this question, that why this spread of disinformation happens or takes place in the first place. Like, why do there are factions in our society or around us who try to hijack this narrative? What is the need to do that? And it's a very important question that we keep asking ourselves when we are designing campaigns and projects at DASTAK Foundation. So during COVID pandemic, just like everywhere else in the world, we received a lot of complaints of intimate partner violence. We received massive complaints of marital rape. Like, you see a lot although there was an exacerbation of reported cases of violence, but I also observed this realization among survivors that they are being subjected to violence within their households, and there is something that needs to be done about it. Because you see, before pandemic, this used to be a part of everyday life, where people would get to go out of the house, and they would experience violence, but not to an extent where they would feel ready to do something about it. But during the COVID, in closed spaces, women realized the extreme form of violence that they were experiencing, and that compelled them to reach out to support mechanisms. Obviously we connected them with essential services. We like formed this, we signed MOUs with different organizations that were providing mental health support, legal support, and shelter home support to survivors of gender based violence. And we launched this helpline in collaboration with Ministry of Human Rights, which was active throughout the COVID pandemic, which dealt with cases of gender based violence. Simultaneously, we also wanted to create, or maybe give power to women human rights defenders to come up with counter narrative to this disinformation that was spreading everywhere, in terms of reporting of GBV, in terms of realizing what gender based violence is. So we launched this network, which was called Tabir Network. But as part of Tabir, we did multiple series of online sessions with lawyers, with psychologists, with mental health providers, in which from time to time, weekly, we gave women information on how to identify violence, how to report violence, how to be an effective bystander if you see someone around you experiencing violence, and how to report that, how to extend your support to someone. Simultaneously, we also launched this digital platform which was called Vasila. So on Vasila, we compiled, you could say, all sorts of information that could help and facilitate a survivor of gender based violence, and put it on a digital platform. We fact checked that information. It had all the gender based violence laws from the country. It had ways and means on how to report workplace harassment, how to report cyber harassment, how to report domestic violence, how to report rape. So earlier, when we would receive the call vis-a-vis reporting of violence from any one of the survivors, so people also do not know how to act differently while experiencing different form of violence. So they need to be told that in the case of an acid attack, you are supposed to go to the hospital. If somebody is experiencing cyber harassment, different organization, entity or authority deals with that. You're not supposed to go to the police station. So that's where Dastak's work actually tried to make a difference, where we informed and educated people regarding the proper course of action and how it can be taken timely, and how the response time in terms of gaining the right kind of support can be minimized. So basically, through Vasila and Tabir, these were the two core programs that we launched and we did during the COVID pandemic to facilitate the survivors of gender based violence from the platform of the DASTAK Foundation.
Thank you, Hira. It's really inspiring to hear all the amazing things that you and your organization did during the COVID-19 pandemic to help women survivors of violence. And I would definitely ask our listeners to check out these platforms. And we will add links in the description box later.
Yeah, and I would also like to share with all of you very candidly, although now I can talk about it lightly because it happened like 4 months ago. But when we launched Vasila as a platform, so it had like directories of legal aid, psychological support, mental health services from across Pakistan, and a lot of information related to gender based violence. So we started receiving a lot of threats. And after we had launched it back in 2020, like after 18 months, the entire website was hacked, our data was deleted, and we were just like, we received a lot of emails and threats in the form of comments and stuff like that. So right now, with support from Geneva, we are in the process of rebuilding Vasila all over again, trying to put all the data back on the platform, and we did not give up. But this also happened because we launched this platform which was supposed to support survivors of gender based violence. So I just wanted to share with you that the work that we are doing, it comes along with a lot of challenges, and sometimes it's not easy. But what is important is that we do not give up and believe in the work that we are doing.
Definitely agree. And I'm so sorry to hear that the website was hacked and taken down. But I really hope that you are able to. And if you ever need any help, please do let me know. This is on a personal basis, not. And now, as we are nearing the end of our podcast, I actually have a fun question for both of you, and I would like you to take just it's a rapid question, so I would really like a quick answer. So since both of you were part of the Swedish Institute's programs, is there any moment from the program that you would like to share with us which was important to you, or which was like an aha moment? A lot of our listeners would be alumni, and also maybe prospective Swedish Institute participants. So I think it would be fun to hear for them. How was your experience? What was your aha moment?
When I joined the Swedish Institute in Sweden back in 2017, I was pregnant. So you can imagine the amount of love that my my daughter guaranteed. And I still I gave birth after 6 months or so, but we still have the love letters were written by the other colleagues there to her. And yeah, even like when I was with them, how they were coming just close to me and were saying, can we whisper to her something? We love her so much. And then I always tell her, like, you are so lucky because you met all of these people from around the world, who are, all of them are great, inspiring, doing a lot of amazing work. And on one day, you will join them because these people are you are connected to them spiritually, and on one day you will do a lot of great work with them, hopefully in the future. So I believe like I had a lot of great moments, and I'm still having a lot of warm memories from my experience with Swedish Institute. But this one was like, I think it's the closest one to my heart. Whenever I think about it, I feel like it warms my heart, and I feel like we are loved. We are part of this love and solidarity network of everyone was there in.
That's so sweet. Thank you for sharing, Noura. And Hira, now over to you.
Thank you. So obviously the leader lab that I was a part of was remote because it happened during the pandemic. So alongside the digital FICAs, which were really amazing, and the sessions on GBV, I think after listening to Noura, I remember between the time that I got selected to when actually it started, I had a fracture in my right foot. So I was severely unwell. And I remember having this email conversation where I thought that I might not be able to do it, but then the team at SI was really cooperative, and they were so amazing that even though I was unwell and emotionally not in the right place, but we pulled it off because of the support that I received from my group, because we had like some closed advocacy groups in the SI lab, and then the team and the participants, as a whole. So I thought that I wouldn't be able to do it, but I pulled it off. And during the SI lab, my foot got better, and I got well when we were graduating. So it's a strong reminder of what I went through, but pulled it off because of the support of the SI team.
And Hira will be in Stockholm for the advocacy lab in September, and that's also when this podcast will be launched. So everyone, watch out for Hira. Uh, thank you both for sharing so much. As we are at the end of this episode, I am really so grateful to both of you for joining with me today and sharing your stories and your journeys of advocacy and change. And next week, we will be back with another episode on mental health and wellness and activism. Stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite streaming platform. Bye.